We are 2 days out from game day in the NFL postseason, a doubleheader that kicks off the opening round of the NFL playoffs on Saturday. But for DRS, a lot of teams around the National Football League, the offseason is already underway. And for 6 teams currently in the National Football League looking for a new head coach with a vacant head coaching position, which made this report yesterday afternoon incredibly intriguing. From NFL Network's Tom Pelissero, multiple NFL teams have inquired about whether legendary coach Bill Belichick, the same guy that is North Carolina's football head coach, would reconsider his move to CFB, including the Raiders, whose new minority owner, Tom Brady, spoke recently with his old coach, per league sources. DRS, when you saw that tweet around noon Eastern time yesterday afternoon, you had just logged off the money line. I had just started things on Football Full Circle. We were done together on the early line. So you're sitting there, you see that. What's your first thought?
I'm just puzzled by everything going around Bill Belichick. I was shocked he actually didn't get a job last year, but you figured he would just sit it out. There's going to be 6, 7, 8 coaching jobs opening. People are going to beat down the doors, just like they did. They give Vrabel's not a hot candidate last year. Now he's a super hot candidate. You knew this was coming around. And also, is he just in a position that goes, you know what? I'm older now. Like, let me be a dad. My son, I want to get his foot in the door. I can guarantee I'll get this job at Carolina. I'll dip out after a year or two. My son's going to get that job, because that looks like what it is at this point right now to me, to be honest. Because why would he go to North Carolina knowing that multiple head coaching jobs could be his in the next year that he could resurrect and get back in the NFL game, which he wanted to do, and then take a job at Carolina with some mysterious $10 million buyout, goes to $1 million. So I'll get this job. I'll get him going on the right track. I'll hand it off to my son. Then I'll dip back to the NFL the next year. But here's what I do want to happen here. I would love to see this.
Yeah.
I would love to see the full court press bar, let you say, the Raiders and Tom Brady, and him leave Carolina. And we can all laugh at North Carolina going like, man, we just got worked over. Only to see North Carolina go, okay, that was real funny. Now your entire staff is fired, including your son, and we're back on the men looking for another head coach. This just has stink written all over it, because Belichick's going to be a 5-year guy and just retire at Carolina. That's not happening. So was the ulterior motive like, you know what? Let me exert my influence to get my son a job and dip out and just see him take over. Was that really what it was all about? Seems like it.
So many angles to break this down from the NFL perspective. Would any of the 6 organizations looking for a new head man even want Bill Belichick? Is that why he had to go the college route to begin with? Because the opportunity around the National Football League, not actually all that available for a guy that needs full control, it would seem, based on his track record of a franchise. What would it mean for North Carolina? What would it mean for his son, Steve Belichick, and the staff in Chapel Hill? All of that in just a moment. But, Donnie, this story lost a little bit of luster. I was really excited to break it down with you as that report came out yesterday afternoon on this Thursday. After this report from The Athletic's Diana Rossini, only of The Athletic, Bill Belichick has no plans to return to the NFL. Per sources, I'm told his sole focus is on coaching and recruiting for North Carolina as he continues building the Tar Heels' future. He's recruiting today in New Jersey. They did get a UConn transfer, a big-time defensive lineman, to make his way to Chapel Hill, and a commitment in the last 24 hours. So that's good news. We saw Belichick out on the road with his son and new defensive coordinator Steve earlier this week as well. But, Donnie, before we even talk about the plausibility of either of these reports, if any of the head coaching vacancies would even want Bill, what it might mean for his reputation, UNC, all of that, my number one question to this reporting right here, right now, is why? Who does it benefit? The NFL teams that are inquiring about Bill Belichick, Belichick and his representation to try to build some luster back for his coaching acumen in resume? And why now? We already had 3 head coaching vacancies throughout the regular season. You had a pretty good idea of not if, but when, or not when, but if some jobs were going to open up. And Belichick, with all of his ties to the National Football League, certainly is in those circles where he could at least inquire to see if there was a chance an organization like the Raiders would move on at some point this offseason, or the Jaguars would fire Doug Peterson. So who does this benefit? Either the Pelissero report or even the contradiction from Rossini. Frankly, I don't think it's a good look on either side, and I don't understand the timeline of this reporting.
No, we're here also with Diana Rossini. Imagine if she came back and said, hey, just talk to Bill Belichick. He can't wait to get out of Carolina. He is open for business in the NFL. Of course it's going to say that doesn't want to go anywhere because nobody would go there as a recruit, even though other schools are actively doing that, saying he ain't going to be there for more than 2 years. Why would you go? That is an uphill hurdle. But also understand this. Whose fault is this? It's Bill Belichick's and it's Carolina. He said, well, why would that be? You know what he should have done? I want a $100 million buyout over the next 4 years if I leave this institution. I want you to be able to bankrupt me. That shows how much I want to be the head coach at North Carolina. But you know what he did? Well, if I have cold feet here, I want to make sure that I'm in it at least for 1 year. So put that at $10 million. But the minute we get to the summer, it's $1 million, meaning I can leave at any time I want if I want to do that. Again, a strong buyout would have had nobody asking questions going like, he's got an ironclad, basically, prenup here. He can't get out of this for 3 years, so stop calling. Why are NFL teams calling? Because they know he eventually wants to be an NFL coach again, which is why it's a $1 million buyout next summer. That's ridiculous. He brought it on himself, and it's right to ask these questions. Hey, Bill, you want to go back to the NFL? No, I don't. Hey, Bill, why do you have a $1 million buyout that drops by $9 million in just a couple months? Because you want to go back to the NFL? Ask that question here. That's what doesn't make sense.
And so that's a key component of this because last month, now just a few weeks ago, when Bill Belichick was introduced in his opening press conference in Chapel Hill, he was asked those questions. Are you here for a short time? Are you interested in the NFL? What is your plan in place? And of course, Belichick said the right things. I'm committed to Carolina. I wanted to be here. I chose to be here. But after the news conference, came the contract details. North Carolina is a public school. You can get that information readily available. In a very intriguing buyout, June 1st, 2025 being that all-important date. And, Donnie, it was the end of 2024, and it was still the 2024 college football season and 2025's college football season on the horizon. So I think dates were a little bit confusing at first. People said June 1st, 2025. So that's like 2 summers from now, right? Like after his first season at North Carolina? No, it's before he even were to coach a game for the Tar Heels. June 1st, 2025 is now just in a few months. If Belichick were to leave UNC prior to that date, North Carolina is owed $10 million. After June 1st, it's only $1 million. And I'm not going to say an NFL team is going to wait until June 2nd to hire Bill Belichick, but it is worth noting because it did not give the idea of Bill Belichick is here for the long term to build Carolina football into a powerhouse.
Exactly. And that's why we're all having the issues and we can see what it is. And understand this, if he never brought his son, where we got a leaked caveat that I'm taking this job so my son has a head coaching job when I leave. Great move by a father. That shows a lot of love for his son. Hey, you know what? I'm going to exert my influence to make sure you're going to be employed once I'm done with football, as opposed to just picking up the phone. It's crazy. So we have all that incentive to say, why does he want this job? And he said, well, he's a good dad, wants to place his son. And then once he leaves in a year and a half, he'll go right back to the NFL. But I do think it's funny that if he just would have not taken the job at Carolina, like as I said, like there's, let's just say 6 to 7 jobs open. You're going to hear a lot of names like, who is this guy and how did he get this job where Bill Belichick would have been inserted right back into the NFL? It's interesting that he went this route, but it's great for content of why we're talking about saying like, yeah, he's going to college for 1 year and he'll be back in the pros the next year.
So let me ask quickly here, DRS, as we come up on the break. It sounds like you actually put validity into the idea that multiple NFL teams did in fact reach out to Bill Belichick.
Oh, yeah. Not a question. I mean, we're reaching out to Mike McCarthy when you know he's a lame duck. We're reaching out to coaches that have no business, like, you know, multiple assistant coaches just getting calls. He's, of course, going to get a call.
The carousel spins and spins. More around the NFL next. The news and notes around the National Football League, some coaching carousel, some offseason reports, and, of course, as we get ready for the start of the NFL playoffs, just 2 days out from now, on a Saturday with a doubleheader. We got to get you everything you need. And for those teams, DRS, playing on a normal Sunday slate, Wednesday is the opening day of practice. And it was big news yesterday for a couple of quarterbacks. Again, we'll talk about that in just a moment. A reminder, obviously you've been paying attention to the news. I'm sure you have seen the devastating images from around Los Angeles. Numerous wildfires continue to burn in the greater LA area. It is very sad for everybody. I am from that area. My parents' house, the house I grew up in, remains under an evacuation warning. It is a trying time in the City of Angels, a catastrophic wildfire destruction we have not seen in terms of structures in the history of LA, basically. So for a game scheduled, DRS, on Monday night between the Rams and the Vikings inside SoFi Stadium to end out Wildcard weekend, the NFL is making its early preparations. If necessary, the game between the Vikes and the Rams would be moved to Arizona. That's still a long way away. I really, really fear if this game needs to be moved because of what that means for the catastrophic and tragic destruction that would still be continuing around LA and the logistical nightmare that would create. I hope it does not have to be moved, but a contingency plan has been put in place by the NFL.
Had to be done, and it's a smart move by the NFL because, as we say, the games must go on. They're not going to delay an NFL game, a playoff game, a week because that would mess up the structure. As callous as that sounds, it's just the way it works. So moving to Arizona or Vegas, which I thought would be a viable option, they're going to look to do that. And understand this, because we're not calling for, well, yeah, Inglewood's going to be on fire and the stadium's going to burn down. That's why they can't play it there. You're talking about everything around it, the resources, the fire department, the police department, public resources, which are all spent fighting this fire, which usually on a game day in Los Angeles would have to be diverted to another place that's going to get 75 to 80,000 people. And also understand this, as we brought up to start the show, it's not a dome. It's like, hey, we'll just filter the air. It's an open-ended stadium, which means days and days, maybe weeks after this fire is done burning and still smoldering, the smell in the air is enough to choke you where you just can't play that football game or bring fans into the stadium to do that. So right now, oddsman I like to be, is it 50-50 they move? But it's good to see a viable option. If there's anything hanging around where it's even a question, the game needs to be moved just for the safety of the team, the players, and the fans alike at this point, and also the public officials.
Yeah, absolutely so. And again, to Donnie's point, it's not that the fire is in the line of SoFi Stadium about to burn down where the Rams and the Chargers play. It's not actually all that close to that where these fires are at the moment. It's because of all the logistics of tired first responders that have been battling wildfires to keep people's homes upright to the best they can, and the logistical nightmare traffic would create in an already very congested city in Los Angeles. We hope it does not have to be moved. There is still some time till Monday, but of course the contingency plan is in place. Now to the actual football. Before we do that, though, again, a reminder, we send all of our love, our thoughts to everybody affected by this tragedy, by the wildfires in the LA area, as we are on Spectrum Sportsnet LA, so our hearts are with all of you. Back to the football in the news for the postseason and the guys available to play in games. Dr. Donnie is always on it. Soon we're going to have to give him like a fake MD that he can put up in the background there, maybe right under the DRS that looks like his medical certificate, because he knows how to diagnose hamstrings, calf injuries, and now also understands concussion protocol better than most. Donnie told you yesterday, the reason Jalen Hurts had not been cleared just yet is because he didn't have to practice. In the final stage to emerge out of the protocol is being cleared to practice. Who was on the practice field, cleared to practice yesterday, out of the protocol? The Eagles starting signal caller, Jalen Hurts.
Yep, back in good form here, getting a couple weeks off and slow playing it. And thank goodness that the Eagles had a chance in Week 18 where they'd have to rush him back and force him on the football field or force him back to that game against Washington. They took the approach where we're going to be patient and see what works. And from all intents and purposes at Eagles practice, even according to Lane Johnson, the energy was there. He looked sharp. He's ready to go. You saw the videos, which they allowed the press in there usually for the first 10 or 15 minutes of practice. So underway. Now, granted, you are still theoretically in the concussion protocol. Why? Because they have to monitor you after you get workouts in. But it looks like no worse for the wear last night. Didn't hear any stories this morning that it affected him all that much. And he's been around the football team. It's not as if they brought him back after 2 weeks, like out of a dark room. Hey, is everything okay? Hopefully he can get back out here. He's been progressing through the stages all along. The final hurdle was getting back on the practice field. So it looks like the Philadelphia Eagles, all 11 on offense, going to be there on Sunday.
Yeah, no doubt about it, DRS. We asked, would that line move at all for the matchup between the Birds and the Packers if Jalen Hurts was back on the practice field yesterday afternoon? The answer that Dr. Donnie also told you, no, that was the expected line with Hurts in the lineup. It is still a 4.5-point number in favor of Philly at home. But quarterback questions, I guess, on the other side of the matchup. Jordan Love exited the regular season finale in the opening half with a right elbow contusion. He has said he should be good to go, but yesterday used the word, quote, hopeful he'll play on Sunday. Donnie, is Jordan Love going to be out there for Green Bay?
Yeah, he is going to be out there, but he used to be back in the day, like even like Brett Favre would snap his thumb in half and be like, "What's the issue? I'm definitely playing this week." It's interesting that a quarterback is now saying, like, "I don't know if I'm going to play," knowing he's going to play. Typically, you hide every single injury and be like, "I can't feel my arm right now," and you go, "What are you kidding me? I'm going to go out there and throw for 350 yards this week, and my arm feels fantastic." The gamesmanship between these two teams is hilarious, but the best part is nobody's buying any of it right now. We know they're both going to show up on Sunday. We expect a good football game out of both of them.
Yes, we certainly do. Still a 4.5-point spread. The market has not moved. The total stands at 45 and a hook. Dr. Donnie also becomes forecaster Donnie. DRS, how far are you from Lincoln Financial Field?
I'm farther than I was before. I would say right now, if I got in my car, it's probably a good half hour.
All right, but still pretty close to where the action is going to take place in Philadelphia. Super cold this week in the East Coast, but DRS, what's the weather looking like for Sunday?
36 degrees, no wind, no rain. Let's get it on, people. Don't worry about your prop bets going under because there's bad weather. It's going to be as good as you can get in January in South Philadelphia.
We'll talk more NFL headlines and a new market opening up next. So the news and notes from a quarterback perspective for the start of the NFL postseason, but for teams already in the offseason, it's putting the plans in place for their franchise's future. And that might be the face of the franchise at the quarterback spot. Year number 3 for Brock Purdy now in the books. He is eligible to receive a contract extension. What a discount the 49ers have gotten Purdy at the first 3 years of his NFL career, as he was Mr. Irrelevant, the final pick of the 2022 NFL Draft, playing on that shorter salary. Well, now it's time to pay the piper. But will San Francisco do so? Some interesting reports, Donnie, at the end of the year. Obviously a disappointing season, a failure of a season by the Bay for San Francisco, about the nerve damage continuously for Brock Purdy after the elbow injury he suffered in the NFC Championship game now over 2 years ago. Here was the general manager for the 49ers organization, John Lynch, about the future for Purdy and his contract moving forward.
Well, listen, I think what we know about Brock is that he's our guy. We've got, we have interest in Brock being around here for a long, long time. He's done so much for our organization. He's won big games and had a little tougher task, as we all did this year, with some of the things that happened throughout the course of the year. We just never could string games where we were all together. And through that, he continued to lead. He continued to play at a high level. So we have every interest in him being around.
Whether from the financial perspective, DRS, for Purdy, or at times, is he a game manager? Does he really elevate Kyle Shanahan's offensive scheme? Is he just a merchant with a bunch of talented guys all around him? There's been a lot of conversation about Brock Purdy. What did you make of what John Lynch had to say, and what do you ultimately believe San Francisco is going to do with Purdy this offseason and moving forward?
I believe what John Lynch is saying, and he has to say that. Brock Purdy's a quality NFL starting quarterback. Nobody's going to deny it. Like, the kid can play football. We understand that. But also, this is a business. And if we're out here believing that Brock Purdy, when you watch Brock Purdy, and maybe it's not right, but it's just my opinion, does that tell you, like, you know what, this guy should reset the market to be the highest paid player in the history of the NFL? No, it does not. And maybe he does get a little bit of, well, he's surrounded by so much talent, a great play caller. That's not his fault. He's finding himself in that spot. Why didn't Trey Lance work out then? Why didn't, guys from the past couple years where they were just running out with losing records at San Francisco in years that they were injured, like the Mullins, right, at quarterback? It's like, come on, that's not going to work. But for my money, you have to be a smart businessman. And if he is unhappy with the contract they're going to present, it's simple to do. Do you remember what the Ravens did? Now, granted, the Ravens were on franchise tags, which isn't going to be in effect this year for Brock Purdy since he's under contract for one more year. But the Ravens basically told him, we will write you whatever check you want as long as it's available for the rest of the NFL. You bring us a contract that would pay you $50 million more a year than Deshaun Watson, we're going to match that. But we don't think it's out there. We want to make you the highest paid quarterback out here and pay you a large sum, but we're not going to bid against ourselves. That's how long it take to got that contract there once Jalen Hurts started to sign, then Lamar Jackson sort of fell in line. You need to do the same thing with Brock Purdy, because I'm not calling him Daniel Jones. He's a better quarterback than Daniel Jones. But we laughed at the Giants when most fans that were in the right state of mind let him test free agency. Let him go out there and bring you a contract back. Can we save money? Daniel Jones, we want you back, but we want you back at the right price. They didn't do that. Nobody's going to offer him $1. They paid him $40 million. So the same thing without hurting feelings for Brock Purdy. Hey, look, go out there. We'll even say we're on the trading block. Find a deal that we're not going to match. We'll trade you. We'll get picks back, and you have a great time whatever place you go. But understand this. We're not giving you $60 million a year when there's nobody even bidding $25 million for your services. How about that?
Yeah, it's really interesting, DRS, because we have seen the inflation in the quarterback market. Trevor Lawrence earned a $55 million per year annual average salary that at the time made him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL alongside Joe Burrow and others. And Jordan Love, I believe, included as well. Then Dak Prescott reset that, a $60 million deal at the tail end of the offseason, right before the regular season was about to begin. Is Brock Purdy going to get 40 mil, 35 mil? Is he worth $50 million for San Francisco? You're going to have to pay him a lot, which means you can't pay the other guys on your roster nearly as much. There was some conversation. Would they cut Deebo Samuel to ease their financial burden? Not the plan accordingly in San Francisco. Maybe Javon Hargrave, one of the better interior defensive linemen in the NFL. A lot to figure out for San Francisco after a disastrous season with a peculiar offseason entering 2025 ahead. We get ready to go all around the National Football League in our favorite game. It is buy or sell when Hour 2 starts next. We welcome you to hour number 2 live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. It is game day once again in college football, the college football playoff, the first ever time in the 12-team era, a historic Thursday night, the college football playoff semifinal in Miami. It's the Orange Bowl between two powerhouse and blue blood programs in this sport, both seeking their first national championship in nearly 4 decades. It's the 6-seed Penn State and the 7-seed Notre Dame squaring off tonight in South Florida. A preview of the Orange Bowl later on in this second hour. DRS, did you check the rundown today? Did you see who's joining us in our third and final, by the way?
Yeah, going to be exciting here. We'll see what he's concocting. We'll see if we have any crypto smashes tonight. And I guarantee you this, if you're looking at players for prop bets to take alts overs, change your mind here. We're not going to look at the top wide receivers, the top running backs, the top quarterbacks. You're going to get probably player information you never heard of for a guy to have 60-plus rushing yards and multiple touchdowns when they haven't done that all season long. Get ready, people.
But I will say that's what makes Joe Lisi, the mastermind of the college football pigskin, great. And despite what Donnie might say, they really are best friends. I don't get to work with them together often. I'm excited. I'm going to get a few good chuckles in because nobody better than DRS at ribbing anybody he is friends with, but especially Lisi guy. DRS, we are also now just 2 days away from the start of the NFL postseason. The opening round kicks off on Saturday with a doubleheader in the AFC. 3 games on Sunday, a Monday night cap as well. I don't know if you saw this yesterday, Donnie. As a man that has a lot of thoughts about many things, about how leagues are run, scheduling, all of that goes into it. Did you see that the NFL has sneakily removed Super from Wildcard Weekend after they instilled Super Wildcard Weekend just a few seasons back when the NFL postseason expanded?
You know, it's just starting to buy into Super Wild Card Weekend because it does make some sense. And it sounds bigger than just Wild Card Weekend. Like, Super Wild Card Weekend has the, like, Super Bowl moniker. Like, what a big weekend it's going to be. I feel if we just go back to Wild Card Weekend, it's going to feel like, you know, the wives and the girlfriends out there, like, you're only missing Wild Card Weekend. Like, no, babe, it's Super Wild Card Weekend. You know what? I'll go to Home Depot and I'll go to Bed Bath & Beyond all by myself. You stay home because of how big this weekend is. I think they might be doing us a disservice on the home front here.
A really, really good point, DRS. I think that is very fair. Anytime you add super to anything, it does make it sound super more.
Super DRS. Let's talk. Amazing. Yeah. Super Ben Stevens. I mean, it just sounds better like that. By the way.
That actually made me feel good.
Handle.
And
Super
What,
Ben
you think
Stevens. If you change your Twitter handle to Super Ben Stevens, like that's your new thing, like you see Donnie Right
Yeah.
side. But again, I like to say
Yeah.
when I came to this company here, hey, look, everybody has like their regular name. How about me? No, that's fine. Keep it the same.
No, for sure. You'll never know exactly what that S stands for. Is it side or something else? You know what's funny,
good.
too? When Donnie and I first
Yeah.
started working together, even when we weren't on the same show, when there was the early line and the morning after, there would be a changeover in studio. So Donnie would have to close out the show. And every time he would introduce me, I don't know if it's just because he loved my Twitter handle or he really thought I cared about having my middle name included. It was always coming up on the morning after, Ben Scott Stevens. I still don't know, DRS, if it was
Like
just
you think like a little
for my
highbrow,
middle-
like wearing quarter zips, over jackets. Like maybe if I never saw you before, like Ben Scott Stevens, I wonder what he actually looks like and what he wears to work at this point. Probably would have been something different. By the way, were you wearing coats back then when you were when I was introducing you as Ben Scott Stevens on the morning after?
Turtlenecks,
Wow.
button downs, variety of fun things. Now,
Kevin ruined it all for us. He really did. Like we had to be professional because of one player here at the studios. Come on now. My goodness.
That's one Belladonna shirt. That's what it will do to
one
you.
too many,
Going
man.
one too many indeed. All right, let's dive in to buy or sell around the National Football League. We talked Super Wildcard weekend. Now time to talk the two Super Bowl favorites around the National Football League. The two teams that have earned the bye and the one seed in either conference. The Chiefs, rinse and repeat, in the AFC for the first time in franchise history. The Lions, the one seed in the NFC. Both teams 15-2 this year. Both short favorites to win their conference crowns. But you will see the Lions a shorter price to win Super Bowl 59. I have said it once. I will say it again. Detroit has never even played in a Super Bowl in organization history, let alone won a Lombardi trophy. But buy or sell to you, DRS, the question is this. The Lions are a safer bet than the Chiefs to make, not win, but to make the Super Bowl.
Sell it. I'm selling it right now. And it has nothing to do with the Detroit Lions and how good they are. And they are the favorites to get to the Super Bowl. But we're asking them, are they a safer bet to get there than the Kansas City Chiefs? And Ben hit the nail on the head already. It's like, yeah, you know what? Detroit, 9 in the last 10 years, NFC championship games, multiple. No, none, never. Yeah. They've never done this before. The Kansas City Chiefs are like old hat. You know how many times we talk about them? Like, hey, they're going to go over and play a game in the UK. And it's like, well, the Jaguars are always there. They have the advantage. They know the flight schedule. They know the practice fields. They're used to eating the food. They're used to staying at the same hotels from a team that never does it before. Like, Detroit's in uncharted waters saying, you know what? We're usually the little engine that could getting hammered on Thanksgiving Day as their only big game of the year to now saying, oh, wait, we're the number one overall seed. We are supposed to get to the Super Bowl place we have never been and likely to get to an NFC championship game, which they barely ever appear in. So, no, I'm going to sell that notion because Kansas City, number one, has Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL. Number two, has the best coach in the NFL. And number three, might have the best defensive coordinator in the NFL in Steve Spagnuolo. And they're home, and they have the bye. I'm not saying the Lions aren't getting to the NFC Championship game and or the Super Bowl, but I'm not going to sit up here and say their pathway is better than the Chiefs and should get there. The Chiefs always get there and find a way to get there and will get there again this season. And maybe the Lions get there, but it's not the safer bet. Sell, sell, sell.
I can understand why the question is phrased this way. It does seem rather top-heavy in the AFC, where we have three teams we expect to contend for that conference crown that really anybody could win it. The Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens. But KC has won it 4 of the last 6 years. KC has played in the AFC Championship game all 6 seasons on the doorstep of a Super Bowl appearance. And for the previous 5, not including last year, so 5 of the last 6, the Chiefs have hosted said AFC Championship game inside Arrowhead, which would be the case once again this year if the Chiefs do in fact play in the AFC title. They need just one win to do so against either the Chargers or the Texans. So I also will sell this notion the Lions are a safer bet. The Chiefs deserve the benefit of the doubt in the postseason pedigree to back up that claim. Now, I do, again, get why the question was phrased that way by our producer extraordinaire, Joe Frizo. Because, Donnie, it really does feel that in the NFC, even though there might be some teams that could be pesky, it's really a 2-team race where more than likely we assume we are going to see the Lions and the Eagles in that NFC Championship game in the Motor City, and Detroit will have home field advantage. Now, could the Vikings, the divisional mates of the Lions, give Detroit a test in round number 2, that divisional round? Of course. With all the storylines of Matthew Stafford returning to the Motor City once again, might the Rams, with their own playoff pedigree, be able to make some noise to keep Detroit from getting to an NFC Championship game for a second consecutive year, be able to say something about it? Sure. But I do believe the Chiefs are the safer bet to reach a Super Bowl.
Yes, and also when you are looking at both teams have home field advantage, it will make a difference. But having said, yes, the Bills are a good team. The Baltimore Ravens are good. But we're not looking at the Bills and the Ravens showdown with the Chiefs the same way I think most people are saying, boy, if the Lions and Eagles meet up on that championship Sunday, watch out, man. Lock yourself at home and watch out, people.
More on the early line next. NFL playoff edition of Buy or Sell, one of our favorite games each and every week throughout the National Football League as we get you ready for the start of the playoffs. DRS, it's not just a team outlook, but whether fair or not, we associate team success with individuals, but really just one individual position more than the rest. That would be the quarterback. And when you talk quarterback success, out of any of the 14 QBs that will play in the NFL playoffs, one guy rises above the rest. That is Patrick Mahomes. Look at the record. 15-3. 15-3. Those 3 losses, by the way, twice in the AFC Championship, once in a Super Bowl, 2 of the 3 losses against the legendary Tom Brady. Josh Allen is 5-5. He has never played in a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson, a lot of questions to be answered and narratives to turn around here in this postseason, 2-4. Sam Darnold has never played in a playoff game. Jalen Hurts is 2-3, but at least owns a conference championship a couple of years ago. Those decisions made, again, by our producer extraordinaire, the 5 quarterbacks he feels are under the most pressure entering this postseason. The greatest of all times, or that idea, the conversation for Mahomes, is why he is always under pressure. So as we look at that crop of 5, DRS, buy or sell, Lamar Jackson is the quarterback facing the most pressure this postseason.
Oh, absolutely buy it. There's no doubt about it when you look at that list of who's under pressure. If they lose, everything is going to come down on them. Why? Because they're great football players. If I equate it to my Eagles fandom over the years, Donovan McNabb actually won a lot of big football games. But the biggest football games and the moments you needed him to win and step up in moments, you saw that he wasn't able to get the job done. And maybe an unfair label on McNabb, which how good he was during his time for the Eagles, the same thing can be said here about Lamar Jackson to an nth degree, because Donovan McNabb was never the MVP of the NFL. Got close a couple times. Lamar Jackson is a multiple-time MVP and just might win another this year. So you're saying if I'm going to have a 3-time MVP that can't even get to a Super Bowl, and every time you get to the playoffs, it always falls on him. Because when's the last time? Because let's just say the Super Bowl with the Eagles where they went up against Kansas City, right? You didn't look at that game and say, well, Jalen Hurts, boy, in the biggest moments, he was really bad. I understand he fumbled in that game, but he was toe-to-toe with Mahomes, where when that game was over, you didn't say, boy, if we had a better quarterback or better quarterback play, that would have been handled. We've been saying that about Lamar Jackson in the playoffs, and it's not unfair to say it. Watch those football games. And even last year, if you want to take it out and say maybe it was more of a coaching thing than him, he threw multiple bad plays, ending up at interceptions down the stretch on footballs you just can't throw. Now, do we blame him for Zane Flowers fumbling on the goal line, which could have changed the trajectory of that football game? No, we don't. And rightfully so. He shouldn't be charged for that. But when you're the quarterback, you're going to get the accolades. And maybe when you do lose, some of those accolades don't go your way, like, well, he just lost that game. You need him to have clean football and get to a Super Bowl and perform well. So for me, buying that notion, by far, it's Lamar Jackson. There's not even a close second to me, Ben.
Yeah, I would agree. I also buy that notion to the nth degree. I think Josh Allen might be that second. I understand the point of Patrick Mahomes. Once you have always shown excellence, that is now your standard, right? And anything less than a Super Bowl appearance or perhaps a 3rd consecutive Lombardi trophy, despite the fact even getting to the big game in New Orleans would be historic for this Chiefs organization. Any NFL team, if you come up short of that, the season is considered at least a slight failure. Sam Darnold, not pressure necessarily trying to enter the pantheon of one of the great quarterbacks in the NFL, but trying to prove that this season was not a fluke. like the questions are starting to arise after the Week 18 performance against Detroit. And Jalen Hurts trying to prove he is on that upper tier. He is of the elite echelon around the NFL. But to your point, DRS, it is Lamar Jackson. First year as a full-time starter in Baltimore. 2019, he wins the NFL MVP award, his second season in the NFL. Baltimore has the best record. They're the 1 seed in the AFC. They come up short once again, I believe losing in the divisional round in their first game against Derrick Henry and the Titans, if I am not mistaken. Last year, 1 seed, best record in the NFL. A sensational performance in that divisional round matchup against the Texans. 152 yards through the air, didn't have to do much. 2 touchdowns. 100 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. 252 total yards, if you will, 4 total scores. All right? The narrative's starting to change because he entered 1-3 in playoff action with home field advantage in Baltimore against what many considered the worst of the KC teams we had ever seen reach an AFC championship. The first to have to win the conference crown on a road, 272 yards, but just 20 of 37, a touchdown, an interception, a costly one. And the Ravens' game plan was really all on Lamar to run. You are not given the benefit of the doubt when you are the 1 seed with home field advantage, even when it's the Chiefs and Mahomes on the other side. This is now Lamar's time to prove it. But, Donnie, potentially after this weekend in a home game with the largest spread against the Steelers, the Ravens will have to go on the road the remainder of their postseason run.
Yes, and understand this too. Like, we're not adding up Lamar Jackson. Like, he doesn't have to be the spotlight player, even though he will be, which means he doesn't have to throw 40 times in a football game and complete 35 of those passes for 5 touchdowns and no interceptions. What we're saying is, when I look at the Baltimore Ravens, just stick to what you do best and what got you here. If we end up winning a Super Bowl, talking about the Ravens, where Lamar Jackson doesn't throw over 25 passes all the way through, nobody's going to look at that team like, oh, well, Lamar didn't lead them to victory. No, he's going to get the accolades being the quarterback because you know he made dynamic plays, whether it's touchdown passes or with his own legs or Derrick Henry. That's all I want to see, which makes it so maddening last year when we look at Lamar Jackson. The only future I placed before the season started was for the Ravens to win a world championship. And I was sitting high and mighty entering into the playoffs going, I have the best team at home. No doubt in my mind they're going to play well. And it wasn't even that it was Lamar Jackson playing bad. It was the coaching, the play calling, and how that entire game played out for Kansas City, which had everybody upset because if you just stuck with what got you there, Lamar picking his spots in the passing game, running the football and playing good defenses, good things will happen for the Ravens. So that goes into it as well.
And we'll talk Super Bowl MVP odds on the other side of the break. Josh Allen did end out the regular season as a minus 470 favorite to win the MVP award this year in the NFL. But we will show you those Super Bowl MVP odds again after our commercial break because it does emphasize the idea of pressure on a quarterback. And certainly for both the Ravens and the Bills to get off the fast starts because it's expected early. More on the early line next. The Super Bowl MVP odds, a new market out this week on the FanDuel Sportsbook, kind of re-emphasize what we have been discussing. The quarterbacks around the NFL about to embark on a postseason run with the most pressure. But again, it also kind of just ties up to where you are in terms of your Super Bowl odds as a team. Patrick Mahomes, of course, is the Super Bowl MVP favorite. Should that be overly shocking? No, because the Chiefs have the second best price to win a Super Bowl. You will see the number on the Baltimore Ravens. It's plus 550. Now, actually, whoa, is that correct? The Ravens have a better price to win a Super Bowl than that of the Buffalo Bills at this moment? That's a change up from where things were earlier this week as it stands right now. The Bills, though, a better price to win the AFC. Am I going crazy? Can we double check this?
Different money.
Quick? Buffalo is,
different money spots, I guess, yeah.
It must be. Buffalo is plus 250 to win the AFC. 30 cents in front of Baltimore at a plus 280 price. But the Ravens are plus 550 with the third best number to win the Super Bowl itself. Nearly $0.50, actually a full $0.50 in front of Buffalo at a 6-1 number. Regardless, your prices to win Super Bowl MVP, DRS, very closely tied to what your team's price is to win just the Lombardi Trophy overall. The only guy that really doesn't stack up is Jared Goff, plus 650 number, despite the fact his Lions are the Super Bowl favorites because you will see his sensational running back at 15-1, that being Jahmyr Gibbs, with the next best price of anybody not named a quarterback.
Yeah, the one thing I do disagree, again, we're anticipating guys getting to the Super Bowl, so that makes a difference where it's like, hey, I don't know, CJ Stroud, why don't I just take a flyer because quarterbacks always win it, and if Houston wins the championship, 151 is a pretty good price on CJ Stroud. If we're being honest, you see Jahmyr Gibbs at 15-1. Yes, Detroit has a great chance to get to the Super Bowl, but David Montgomery is coming back. No, I would never take Gibbs at that point because they'll make sure that's a 50-50 backfield at that point, which allows me to slide it down. If we're not going quarterbacks with teams with legitimate chances to make the Super Bowl, Saquon Barkley, 21-1, Derrick Henry, 27-1. Those would be my eyes would go if you wanted that longer shot as opposed to just taking the quarterback. And understand this, favorites to win the Super Bowl, Kansas City, they get there and win it. It's going to be Patrick Mahomes. It's not going to be Kareem Hunt. It's not going to be Isaiah Pacheco. It's not going to be Travis Kelce. It will be Mahomes. That's why they're priced accordingly. But if I'm looking outside the box to say, boy, and sometimes it's just supposed to be the Super Bowl MVP, but we know how people vote. If Saquon goes 100 yards, 100 yards, 100 yards, then goes in the Super Bowl for $150, and Jalen Hurts throws for 275 and 3 touchdowns, I'm like, you know what? Saquon was really the MVP of this team. Let's give it to him in the Super Bowl. Same thing with Derrick Henry. Yes, Lamar Jackson might win the MVP in the regular season and have a decent run, but if Derrick Henry for the next 3 games over 100 yards and a big Super Bowl, that's a nice price at 27-1. Because hear me out on this. Same thing with everybody else. If the Eagles make it and or the Ravens make it, those price points aren't going to be 20-1 and 27-1.
Sure.
They're going to be 2-1 and plus 175 at that point.
It's the debate we had last year. Would Christian McCaffrey actually be the Super Bowl MVP favorite in front of Brock Purdy because of what he meant to that offense even more than a quarterback? But we're talking pressure here. Lamar Jackson under a ton to try to turn around the narrative of his lack of success in the playoffs. Could argue the same for Josh Allen. 4 consecutive AFC East divisional crowns, now make it 5, and never a berth to a Super Bowl. Only 1 AFC championship game appearance way back in 2020. Ousted from the postseason the last 3 years in the divisional round, 3 of the previous 4 by Kansas City. But both expected DRS to have the opportunity to face off in a divisional round matchup to potentially see the Chiefs again in that AFC championship game, because both Buffalo and Baltimore are largest favorites of this wild card weekend. The Bills laying 8.5 against the Broncos. The Ravens laying 9.5 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Buy or sell to you. The Broncos are more likely to win outright than the Steelers.
I'm going to sell that for one reason, because we know how long this rivalry goes back between the Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, where even if you saw the last game, it was clear that the Ravens are probably the better team, even though the first game, the Steelers got the better of them. The Ravens are playing much better football down the stretch than the Pittsburgh Steelers, but these two teams really know each other. These two teams know how to get after it, and you're talking about Mike Tomlin as an underdog with his team hanging around. There's a legitimate chance that happens. I would be surprised if the Ravens completely take apart the Steelers for a 17-point win. I'm looking at this game in the second half being a one-possession type of game. Maybe the Ravens cover, maybe they don't. But flip it over to the other side. I do like the Broncos, but they are going on the road as underdogs with a rookie quarterback, which usually doesn't tend to help you all that much in the playoffs. And from a perspective of betting, Denver is very good at winning games they're supposed to win. Not so good at games they're not supposed to win, and they're not supposed to win this. So, might surprise some. I'll go Steelers.
We'll continue buy or sell, continue the debate next. We continue playing buy or sell to set the stage for the NFL postseason and very soon the NFL draft. But I do want to make one final point about the last topic we were discussing. Of our 6 wild card weekend games, we only have 2 that feature a point spread at 5 or higher. And in fact, both are north of a touchdown. The Ravens in the Saturday night cap of our doubleheader just 2 days from now. 9.5-point favorite against divisional foe and rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers. It seems like a lot for a game between those two bitter foes where no love is lost from the AFC North, the Flock and the Steelers, and an 8.5-point spread in favor of the Bills. First game of 3 on Sunday against the Broncos. DRS, I would agree with you. I actually think the Steelers are more than likely to win outright in favor of the Broncos. I think the Bills are in command of that game. And again, as we discussed yesterday, I deem this season a wild success story for Sean Payton, Bo Nix, and the Broncos, and a ton of building blocks in place to have a lot of optimism in the offseason and beyond into 2025. But when you look at the Broncos' actual resume this year and what they have done as an underdog as of late, when the market has reset in those matchups against the teams they were not expected to beat, it has not been an overly pretty picture for Denver. A successful season, I think it comes to an end and potentially by double digits on Sunday afternoon. And on paper, I actually am not going to go to the prescribed notion of, oh, it's an AFC North game between the Steelers and the Ravens. You know, it's going to be decided by a single score, as 8 of the last 9 have been, 5 of those 8 by a field goal. I do really think the Ravens should win this game comfortably. But there is that thought of familiarity if the Steelers can be elite offensively, which we have not seen in the 4 consecutive defeats to end out this year, that Pittsburgh could stay in it. Again, I think the Steelers have a more likely chance to win outright than the Broncos. Do I think either win outright? No. Would I even take any of that money line sprinkle, even if you made it a 10-1 price on the Steelers? Still probably not. I think both Baltimore and Buffalo win rather comfortably to set up what would be an incredible divisional round game in Western New York between Josh Allen and his Bills and Lamar Jackson and his Ravens.
And the answer might be a little bit different if we were just asking the question, which team do you feel is more likely to cover? But we're not actually going in there and winning that football game. There are two different scenarios that has played out. And also, as we spend a lot of time, and rightfully so, one of these guys is a rookie in Bo Nix. He's not supposed to win. The other one's Russell Wilson, who's been to a Super Bowl and won one. But also, we talk about the pressure that starts to mount up in the playoffs on Lamar Jackson. And you know he's going to get heated up in that pocket without his best wide receiver from a really good pass rush from the Steelers. We've seen crazier things happen, and the game slows down in the playoffs. Hopefully we're in for some good football to watch, and maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers can steal one. But as Ben said, are we looking for either one of these underdogs really to win outright? No. Otherwise, we'd be pressing the lever down, saying, oh, I can't believe these spreads are so high. Forget about it. Let's just take the money line on both. We're not doing that. You're asking to pick the winner of this football game. It's hard to win on the road in the playoffs when, theoretically, you're not the better team. So it's a tough stance anyway.
Yeah, completely agree. And again, it re-emphasizes the idea of pressure because more than likely, we are going to see Josh Allen face off against Lamar Jackson in the divisional round for a spot in the AFC Championship game. One quarterback will start to change his narrative. The other will have to continue with those storylines and the feedback in a negative way that we have seen plague their postseason careers to this point. Let's talk quarterbacks of the future. In the number 1 overall pick odds, which have changed a ton in the last week or so. Toward the end of the regular season in the NFL, at the end of the regular season in college football, it was Shedeur Sanders at a minus 200 price, Colorado's quarterback, of course, to be that first overall selection. Now it's Miami's QB by way of Wazoo and Incarnate Word. That would be Cam Ward as a minus 125 favorite to be the first overall pick. There could be a lot of reasons why. Of course, you see the Heisman winner, Travis Hunter, there as well at a 10-1 number. But more than likely, a quarterback goes first off the board, especially with the Titans, a quarterback-needy team holding on to that pick. Buy or sell? Donnie's guy, Miami's Cam Ward, will be the first overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft.
I'm going to buy it at this point right now because I do think, and you see the odds, it's not minus 500 to plus 650 at this point. You're looking neck and neck in a coin flip here. But where I give the slight edge to Cam Ward is watching both of these football players. They're good football players. They're both going to go in the first round. I expect them to have results once they get to the NFL. But Cam Ward just feels like he's leveled up just a little bit more than Shedeur. And some might say, well, that's not really fair. Did you see the growth and maturity of Shedeur over the past year or two? Yes, we've seen that. Did you also see the talent at Colorado not be so good a year ago and get a little bit better this year? Both of these guys had a lot of talent at wide receiver and running back, maybe even a little bit more on the side here for Cam Ward if you include that offensive line. But for me, if you want just a guy that's going to stand and deliver in the pocket and also make those tough throws but be able to escape the pocket, I just like Cam Ward a little bit more. And I'm not saying this is fair, but it is a question that you have to ask. What encircles which quarterback you're going to take? Yes, you get Cam Ward. He's a good football player. Yes, you get Shedeur Sanders. He's a good football player. But if you are an organization with a general manager and an ownership group that accepts Shedeur Sanders, who is a rock star right now, makes a ton of money in NIL, he is going to bring a lot of focus on your team, both good and bad. And also, what do you get from the father looking over his shoulder like, I don't like what's going on with my son. Maybe this should not be that place. So you do have to ask those questions on if there is baggage, and maybe it's unfair because I just told you they're two good quarterbacks. But does an organization side with maybe the quieter football player maybe off the field than the other one?
So, DRS, that's what I actually think has caused the change here. Not necessarily the egos or the allure of either quarterback, but just what Tennessee might be willing to deal with or what they prefer in quarterback skill set. I actually think it's pretty even in terms of talent, skill level, and how I think both will be in the NFL at the quarterback position. I think both have the chance to be successful. Is there a generational talent at least entering, like a Caleb Williams or a Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels or a C.J. Stroud or even Bryce Young, at least their perception entering an NFL draft? Not necessarily. DRS, neither of these two guys were actually the favorites to be the first overall pick at the beginning of this football year. It was Georgia's Carson Beck. We're not even sure he's going to be a day 1 or day 2 pick come the end of April at this point. Sanders had a shorter price before the season got started at plus 380, which was the second best number. Cam Ward, fifth best price at 14-1. But now the perception is, hey, we might have a 2-quarterback draft, at least in the opening round, for quarterbacks that we are going to see hear their name called early and often. Last year, we saw 6 in the opening round, a modern NFL draft record, and not just 6 by the time we were done with 32, 6 by the time we were done with 12, Donnie. So the NFL was in love with quarterbacks, and there were a ton of teams last year that needed a future signal caller, as is the case this year, certainly at the top. The Titans, the Browns, the Giants need one as well. The Patriots don't, the Jags don't, and then the Raiders, drafting 6th overall, do need a quarterback of the future. We're just not sure outside of Cleveland if any of those teams will get a chance. But I do believe, Donnie, Tennessee, at least as reports state, like Cam Ward a little bit more. And I also believe it's intriguing because we know who Deion Sanders is. We know who Prime is. He has told us he is going to be heavily invested in trying to pick the destination that Shedeur Sanders goes. Shedeur was wearing Giants cleats to play in the Alamo Bowl against BYU when it seemed like the Giants controlled their own destiny to have that first overall pick, only for Shedeur not to play all that well in the Alamo Bowl and the Giants to squander that opportunity. All of that, more than skill set and talent, is why I think Cam Ward is the favorite right now.
Yeah, and also you are going to get smokescreen season where bettors and gamblers are like, you're going to get those little tidbits, and rightfully so. Push the lever, I'm going to make that bet, and these odds will change because theoretically, get ready for the next 2 to 3 weeks when they tell you that Travis Hunter is too light to play in the NFL, and they can't even believe they had him rated this high from college. It's coming because they want him to drop to another team.
One thing I'll buy more than anything, those odds will change again. An Orange Bowl preview next.